God's timing for your soulmate is perfect even now, and if you are listening to this at a moment when your heart feels tired from waiting, confused by delays, or quietly questioning whether love is truly meant for you, then understand this deeply before anything else. Delay is not denial, silence is not absence. And the space between you and the love you desire is not empty but carefully orchestrated by God in ways your present vision cannot fully comprehend, because what feels like waiting to you is actually preparation in heaven, what feels like isolation is divine alignment, and what feels like nothing happening is often everything shifting behind the scenes in your favor. You may look around and see others getting engaged, married, celebrating anniversaries, posting smiling pictures and announcing pregnancies, and somewhere inside a whisper asks, "When will it be my turn?" But God does not operate on comparison. He does not rush because someone else is ahead. He does not panic because society sets a timeline. And he certainly does not forget the desires he himself placed inside your heart, because if the longing for deep, covenant love exists within you, it is not accidental, it is intentional. And the one who authored that longing is also the one writing the love story that will fulfill it at the appointed time. Sometimes we believe that if something hasn't happened yet it means we missed it, we lost it, or we weren't chosen, but divine timing does not work on fear-based assumptions, it works on perfect synchronization of growth, healing, maturity, readiness, and purpose, because a soulmate is not just someone who loves you emotionally, a soulmate is someone who aligns with your destiny spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. And that level of alignment cannot be rushed without consequences. If God gave you the right person before you were healed from your last heartbreak, you would project old pain onto new love. If He brought them before you understood your own worth, you might accept less than you deserve. If He united you before your character was refined, the relationship might collapse under immaturity. So what you call late might actually be protected. What you call overdue might actually be perfectly guarded. Because sometimes the greatest act of love God shows you is not giving you what you want immediately but withholding it until it can bless you instead of break you. There are seasons when God isolates you not to punish you but to strengthen you, to teach you how to be whole on your own so that when your soulmate arrives you do not cling out of fear but connect out of wholeness. And there is a massive difference between attachment driven by loneliness and partnership rooted in purpose, because loneliness says, "Complete me," while purpose says, "Walk with me." And God is far more interested in building a purposeful union than satisfying a temporary emotional craving. Think about how many times you prayed for something in the past and later thanked God He didn't answer it the way you asked. Think about the people you once thought were the one but who eventually revealed incompatibilities, red flags, or misaligned values. And imagine if God had allowed those relationships to become permanent simply because you were impatient. Sometimes what leaves is protection, sometimes what doesn't work is mercy, and sometimes what falls apart is God clearing space for something far greater than you could see at the time. Your soulmate's timing is not just about you being ready, it is also about them being ready. Because while you are praying for them, they are also growing, healing, overcoming, learning, and being shaped into the person who can love you correctly. And if you met too soon you might meet versions of each other that are still unfinished, still insecure, still carrying wounds that would collide instead of complement. So heaven allows parallel growth before divine convergence, and that convergence does not happen randomly but intentionally. There are divine appointments written into your story that cannot be forced by anxiety or accelerated by desperation, and when the time is right you will not have to chase obsessively, manipulate outcomes, or beg for consistency, because what God aligns does not require you to abandon your dignity to maintain it. It flows with a clarity that feels peaceful rather than chaotic, steady rather than confusing, reassuring rather than draining, and this does not mean there will be no challenges, but it does mean the foundation will be strong enough to withstand them. Many people enter relationships out of fear of being alone and later discover that being alone was never the real fear, but being unseen was, being unloved was, being misunderstood was, and God hears those deeper cries even when you only articulate surface desires. And He responds not with temporary comfort but with eternal intention, because a soulmate connection is not about surface chemistry alone. It is about shared values, shared faith, shared direction, shared vision, and a shared commitment to grow together rather than compete against each other. If you have been single longer than you expected, consider the possibility that God has been preserving you from settling, preserving your heart from unnecessary trauma, preserving your future marriage from preventable scars, and while waiting can feel heavy, it is often sacred, because in waiting you discover who you are. Without distraction, you confront your insecurities, you strengthen your relationship with God, you refine your standards, and you learn the difference between attraction and alignment. Sometimes we confuse intensity with destiny, but not every intense connection is divine, and not every calm beginning lacks depth. God's timing often arrives quietly rather than dramatically, because peace is a greater confirmation than adrenaline, and stability is a stronger sign than obsession. And when your soulmate enters your life in God's timing, you will notice something different. You will not feel frantic. You will not feel like you must prove yourself constantly. You will not feel like you are fighting for basic respect. Instead you will feel seen, chosen, valued, and safe. Safe not because there are no risks in love but because the foundation is built on mutual commitment rather than one-sided effort. It is easy to believe that if something hasn't happened yet it never will, especially when years pass and expectations shift, but divine timing operates on a perspective that stretches beyond months and birthdays and cultural pressure, because God is not measuring your life by the speed of milestones but by the depth of transformation, and sometimes the transformation required for a lasting soulmate union takes longer than we anticipated. Think about seeds planted in the ground, how from the surface nothing appears to be happening, yet beneath the soil roots are forming, strength is developing, structure is building, and if you tried to dig it up prematurely to check its progress you would damage what was forming invisibly. In the same way your love story may be developing beneath the surface of circumstances you cannot see, conversations you have not yet had, places you have not yet visited, introductions that have not yet occurred, and all of it is being arranged in ways that will make sense only when you look back. There will come a day when you realize that the timing was not random but precise, that the delay protected you from someone who would have wasted your tenderness, that the waiting matured you into someone capable of sustaining deep love, that the loneliness pushed you closer to God instead of into unhealthy attachment, and that every tear you shed in the waiting season watered the ground for something real. Do not mistake the quiet season for a forgotten season, because God does some of His most profound work in silence, and while you scroll, compare, question, and sometimes cry, heaven is coordinating meetings, shaping hearts, closing wrong doors, and preparing right ones. Your soulmate is not lost. Not delayed beyond purpose, not forgotten in some cosmic oversight, but held within a timeline that is both intentional and compassionate. If you rush into something now out of fear that time is running out, you may gain temporary companionship but lose long-term peace, and peace is a far greater treasure than temporary validation. Remember that the goal is not simply to be married or partnered. The goal is to be deeply loved in a way that honors who you are and who you are becoming. And that kind of love requires timing that aligns not just two people but two destinies. When you feel discouraged, remind yourself that the same God who orchestrates sunrise and sunset without fail is capable of orchestrating introductions, conversations, and connections with precision beyond your imagination. And just because you cannot see the movement does not mean there is none. Just because you cannot feel the shift does not mean it has not begun. Sometimes the final pieces are aligning in ways so subtle you will only recognize them in hindsight, and when that moment comes, when you meet the one whose spirit resonates with yours, whose values mirror your convictions, whose presence brings calm instead of confusion, you will understand that nothing was wasted, not the tears, not the prayers, not the nights you felt invisible, not the times you almost settled but didn't. All of it was part of the preparation. So instead of asking, "Why is it taking so long?" perhaps begin asking, "What is this season building in me?" Because the version of you that enters your soulmate relationship must be strong enough to sustain it, humble enough to nurture it, wise enough to protect it, and healed enough to enjoy it without sabotaging it. Divine timing is not about testing your patience for sport. It is about ensuring that when love arrives it stays, that when commitment forms it deepens, that when vows are spoken they are not fragile promises but rooted declarations. Trust that even now, in this very moment, whether you feel hopeful or tired, confident or uncertain, something is aligning, someone is growing, something is closing so something better can open, and you are not behind, you are not overlooked, you are not forgotten, you are simply in the middle of a story that has not yet reached its most beautiful chapter, and when it does you will see clearly that God's timing for your soulmate was never late, never careless, never random, but perfect, even now. And as you continue walking through this season, there is something even deeper you must understand about God's timing for your soulmate, because it is not only about the moment you meet, it is about the condition of your heart when you meet, the clarity of your identity when you meet, and the stability of your faith when you meet. Since love given at the wrong stage of self-understanding can become an idol instead of a blessing, and God will never allow a relationship to replace Him at the center of your life. So sometimes the waiting is actually God gently removing the neediness, the insecurity, and the fear that would have caused you to depend on a person for what only He can provide. Many people say they want a soulmate, but beneath that desire is often a silent hope that this person will erase loneliness, silence insecurity, validate worth, and heal old wounds. Yet a soulmate is not meant to be your savior, they are meant to be your partner. And partnership requires two whole individuals choosing each other freely rather than two broken individuals clinging to each other desperately. And this is why God sometimes stretches the season of singleness longer than you expected, because He is not just preparing someone for you, He is preparing you for someone. There are habits being refined, thought patterns being corrected, emotional triggers being exposed, and spiritual foundations being strengthened in you right now that will directly impact the quality of your future relationship. And if those things were ignored, your love story might begin beautifully but slowly erode under unaddressed weaknesses. Consider how often impatience has led people into relationships that felt urgent but not peaceful, intense but not stable, magnetic but not aligned, and how many times confusion was mistaken for chemistry and inconsistency was excused as mystery. Yet when God's timing unfolds, there is a different atmosphere around it, one that carries clarity rather than chaos, consistency rather than unpredictability, depth rather than surface attraction. And while it may not always be dramatic, it will be steady, and steadiness is often the truest sign of divine alignment. You might worry that time is slipping away, that opportunities are decreasing, that everyone else is pairing off while you remain in waiting, but divine orchestration is not limited by age, geography, social circles, or algorithms, because God does not rely on chance encounters alone. He can arrange meetings in the most unexpected ways, through conversations you almost didn't have, events you almost didn't attend, platforms you almost didn't join, and moments you almost missed. And when it happens, you will see how even your detours were redirected steps. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually a redirection, because had you met earlier you might have been in the wrong city, the wrong mindset, the wrong circle, or even the wrong version of yourself. And timing is not just about chronological readiness but circumstantial precision. Think about how many small details must align for two lives to merge successfully: careers, locations, family dynamics, spiritual maturity, emotional intelligence, life goals, and even the lessons learned from past relationships. And God sees all of it simultaneously while you see only the present moment, which is why trusting Him requires surrendering the illusion that you know the perfect schedule for your own life. Surrender does not mean passivity, it does not mean you stop growing, stop socializing, stop putting yourself in healthy environments. It means you release the anxiety-driven need to control outcomes and instead focus on becoming the best version of yourself in the present. Because when you are fully engaged in your purpose, fully rooted in your identity, and fully aligned with God, you naturally move into spaces where alignment is possible. There is also a powerful truth in understanding that your soulmate is not meant to complete a fragmented identity but to complement a secure one. And if you enter love believing you are incomplete alone, you may tolerate behavior that diminishes you just to avoid being single again. But when you know your worth in God, you will recognize quickly what aligns and what does not, and you will not confuse attention with intention. Perhaps some of the relationships that did not work out were not punishments but lessons, showing you what you truly need, what you cannot compromise on, and what love should never require you to sacrifice. And each heartbreak, while painful, carved wisdom into you that will protect your future marriage from preventable harm. The tears you cried were not wasted, the nights you questioned yourself were not meaningless, because every experience sharpened your discernment, clarified your standards, and strengthened your boundaries. And boundaries are not walls that block love, they are gates that protect it. God's timing ensures that when your soulmate arrives, you are not impressed merely by charm but anchored by character, not swayed merely by words but assured by actions, not captivated merely by attraction but secured by alignment. And that level of discernment often comes only after seasons of disappointment. It is also possible that right now your future partner is walking through their own refining process, perhaps overcoming habits that would have hurt you, perhaps healing from a breakup that taught them how to love more deeply, perhaps building stability in their careers so they can contribute responsibly, perhaps strengthening their faith so they can lead or support spiritually. and if you met before those transformations occurred, you might have encountered a version of them not yet capable of sustaining the love you desire. So instead of viewing this time as empty, consider it synchronized preparation. There is something beautiful about two people growing separately under God's guidance and then meeting at the precise intersection of readiness and purpose, because that meeting is not accidental but orchestrated, not rushed but appointed, not forced but flowing. And while you may feel moments of doubt, wondering if you should lower your standards or accept less just to escape waiting, remember that impatience can create permanent consequences. While patience often produces permanent blessings, the enemy of divine timing is comparison. And comparison will convince you that you are behind when in reality you are simply on a different path. And your path requires specific lessons, specific growth, specific healing, and specific alignment that cannot be copied from someone else's timeline. When you look back one day, you will likely see that had you met your soulmate earlier, you would not have valued them the same way, you would not have understood the depth of what you were receiving, because gratitude often grows through seasons of longing. So do not interpret your current singleness as a verdict on your desirability or worth, because your worth was established long before any relationship status could define it, and the right person will recognize that worth without you having to diminish yourself to earn it. Even now, while you are waiting, there are unseen shifts occurring, conversations happening in places you have never been, decisions being made that will eventually lead paths to cross, and God is not scrambling to figure out your future. He has already written it with intention and care. Your responsibility in this season is not to force doors open but to prepare your heart, cultivate your character, deepen your faith, pursue your purpose, and trust that what is meant for you will not miss you. Divine timing is not about withholding joy, it is about delivering it in a form that lasts, and when your soulmate finally stands before you, you will not say, "Why did this take so long?" but rather, "Thank God this did not happen any sooner," because you will recognize that every delay shaped you into someone ready not just to fall in love, but to remain in love, and that is the true beauty of God's perfect timing. Even now that as you move deeper into this season, understand that God's timing is not only about bringing two people together but about ensuring that when you meet, you both recognize the value of what you have found and are mature enough to protect it, because love that arrives before wisdom often fades under pressure, and connection without spiritual alignment eventually weakens under real-life responsibility. Sometimes the greatest evidence that God is working is not visible progress but internal transformation, the way you now walk away from what once tempted you, the way you no longer chase inconsistent attention, the way your standards have quietly risen without bitterness. And these changes are not accidental but intentional preparation for a relationship that will require emotional stability and spiritual depth. You may still have moments where doubt whispers that perhaps you have been forgotten, but the same God who orders seasons in nature orders seasons in your life, and just as winter does not cancel spring but prepares for it, this period of waiting is not canceling your love story but strengthening its foundation. Imagine meeting your soulmate at a time when you are no longer desperate for validation but secure in identity. No longer afraid of being alone but confident in who you are, because then you will choose them from peace rather than panic, and decisions made from peace tend to last far longer than those made from fear. Also remember that your future partner is not frozen in time waiting idly. They too are evolving, learning, failing, growing, being corrected and refined. And divine timing ensures that both journeys reach a point of readiness before intersection occurs, because God is more concerned with longevity than urgency. When the right time comes, the connection will not feel forced or confusing. It will carry a calm assurance that allows you to breathe rather than overthink, to trust rather than chase, to build rather than beg, and you will realize that nothing about the wait was wasted. Every lesson shaped discernment, every disappointment clarified desire, every lonely night strengthened your dependence on God instead of people, and that dependence created a stability that will bless your future marriage. So even now, if you cannot see movement, trust that alignment is happening beyond your awareness, and instead of measuring time by absence, measure growth by transformation. Because the version of you that steps into your soulmate season must be capable not only of receiving love but sustaining it, and when that moment finally unfolds, you will see clearly that what felt delayed was actually designed, what felt silent was actually strategic, and what felt uncertain was always held securely in God's perfect timing.